This is the family shame every household tries to hide. At my son's wedding, I stood smiling politely as his new bride introduced me to her wealthy parents. The room was filled with laughter until her father's gaze froze on me, his face drained of color. "Wait, aren't you the mysterious investor who bought my company?" he whispered. In that single moment, the laughter vanished. If you're hearing my story right now, hit that like button, subscribe, and let me know in the comments where in the world you're listening. I want to see how far this tale of hidden revenge has traveled. My name is Clara Morgan, though most people just call me Clara. I've spent the last 15 years perfecting the art of being strategically invisible. Turns out, disappearing into the background was the best preparation for what was coming. My son, Ethan, had been dating Sophia for just 8 months, and I had only crossed paths with her twice before the wedding. Both times, she looked me dead in the eye and asked about my simple lifestyle, as if she were already measuring whether I might one day need financial help. The wedding itself, I'll give credit where it's due, it was dazzling. The Harrington estate spanned more than 50 acres across Virginia's rolling hills, complete with a private chapel that could seat 300 guests, and gardens that looked like they'd been plucked straight from a palace. Sophia glided down the aisle in a gown, worth more than most people earn in a year. And Ethan, well, he looked happier than I'd seen him since his father passed away. As for me, I chose my attire carefully. A simple navy dress from a department store, paired with my grandmother's pearl necklace. Nothing flashy, nothing to invite attention. Because here's the truth, privacy lives in plain sight. If you look exactly like what people expect, a quiet widow, living modestly off an engineer's pension and her late husband's insurance, no one suspects a thing. During the ceremony, I caught Sophia's mother, Vivian Harrington, eyeing me like a mismatched piece of furniture, polite, but silently judgmental. But it wasn't until the reception that everything unraveled. The Harringtons had spared no expense. A 12-piece orchestra, ice sculptures, flowers that could have stocked an entire florist. I sat quietly at a corner table, watching my 32-year-old son dance with his new wife, when Sophia swept toward me with her parents in tow. "Mom, Dad," she said, her voice dripping with sweetness, "I want you to meet Ethan's mother." And then came the words that changed everything. Richard Harrington's eyes locked on mine, his breath hitched. "Clara Morgan," he said slowly, and in that instant, I was no longer invisible. "We taunt you, the woman from the Harrington Holdings acquisition, the mysterious buyer, you," his voice cut through the room like a blade slicing silk. Sophia's confident smirk crumbled into confusion. Vivian's jeweled hand froze at her throat. What none of them knew, what no one ever guessed, was that true wealth doesn't flaunt itself with diamonds or designer cars. Real power hides behind simplicity. That's exactly what I had built my life around. And now, my carefully guarded secret was standing exposed under the glittering chandeliers of my son's wedding. There are some things Ethan and I want to talk over with you. I held up the text message so my son could read it. His expression shifted instantly from mild confusion to deep concern. "What do you think she wants?" Ethan asked. I already knew. Sophia Harrington wasn't the type to let mysteries linger, especially not when money was involved. I could picture her spending the entire night interrogating her father about that boardroom meeting 3 years ago, determined to piece together the truth. The real question was, how much had Richard actually figured out? "I think," I said carefully, "your wife is smarter than we've given her credit for." Just then, Ethan's phone lit up. Sophia's name flashed across the screen. He answered, and I could hear her voice, bright, cheerful, but a little too polished. "Ethan, darling, I was hoping we could all have lunch today. Now that we're officially family, there are some things I'd love to discuss with your mom." When he hung up, Ethan looked at me the same way he used to as a teenager, like he knew I was holding back secrets. "Mom, is there something you need to tell me about our finances?" I stared out the window, watching strangers head to work with their coffee cups and briefcases. Ordinary people, with ordinary worries, deadlines, meetings, rent. I envied them. "Yes," I finally said, "I need to tell you everything." Sophia had already claimed her battlefield. She arrived 45 minutes early and positioned herself at the finest restaurant in the city. Corner table, best view, $1,000 bottle of Bordeaux already breathing on the table. She rose when we entered, her smile dazzling, her embrace warm, but her eyes sharp, calculating, skimmed over my modest black dress and understated jewelry. "Clara." "Ethan, thank you so much for coming," she said smoothly. "That's a lovely wine," I remarked, settling into my seat. though perhaps a bit extravagant for a casual family lunch. Her smile never wavered. "Oh, Clara, I don't think there's anything casual about our family anymore." Then, with the grace of someone laying down chess pieces, she made her move. "I spoke with Daddy last night about his past business deals. He mentioned some fascinating stories about anonymous investors and discreet acquisitions." Ethan frowned. "Sophia, what does that have to do with lunch?" She ignored him completely, her gaze fixed on me. "You know, Clara, I studied business at Wharton. I've always loved corporate finance, especially shell companies and private investors." Dad said, "When Harrington Holdings was sold, the buyer acted with unusual discretion, almost like she had something to hide." I swirled my glass of wine, saying nothing. "Silence is power. Let her talk." She leaned forward, voice dropping. "Funny thing about discreet investors, they usually have very large fortunes they'd prefer to keep hidden." "That sounds reasonable," I replied, steady. Her smile sharpened. "Dad also said the woman at the meeting carried herself with quiet authority. Not flashy, not loud, but definitely in control." Sophia slid her phone across the table. A grainy article photo from 3 years ago. Buried in a crowd of lawyers and executives was a woman in a navy dress. Her face half-turned but unmistakably mine. "The resolution isn't great," Sophia said airily, "but the posture, the height, the way she holds her purse, it's remarkably similar to you, Clara." The silence was heavy. Ethan studied the photo, recognition dawning in his eyes. "What a curious coincidence," I murmured. "Right," Sophia replied, her tone now edged like a blade. "Coincidences like my father losing control of his company, just as a mysterious investor paid $700 million for it, or that investor vanishing into thin air right afterward." Ethan's voice cracked. "Mom, tell me you're not who she thinks you are." And in that moment, I saw it. 15 years of secrets, pressing in on me, my son's trust hanging by a thread. "Ethan," I whispered, "there are things about your father's inventions, and our investments, that I never told you." Sophia's smirk was triumphant. She thought she'd won, but she had no idea what she had just set into motion. 3 days later, I was in Michael Lawson's downtown office, watching him adjust his glasses as he studied the documents I'd requested. "Clara, I have to admit this is an unusual request," Michael said. "What's with the sudden interest in your daughter-in-law's family finances?" I sighed. "Because they're about to become my problem." Michael scrolled through file after file. "Well, you were right to ask. Richard Harrington over-leveraged Harrington Holdings back in 2019, took on massive debt, bought out smaller competitors. When the economy tightened, the company nearly collapsed. That's when you swooped in and saved them. But Clara, what you may not realize is that when you bought Harrington Holdings, you didn't just acquire a company, you acquired Sophia's birthright." I froze. He nodded grimly. "She grew up being told she'd inherit that business, worked summers there, got her MBA, planned her whole career around it, and then you replaced her legacy with professional management. From her perspective, you didn't just buy a company, you stole her future." The pieces slid into place with sickening clarity. Michael tapped his screen. "And there's more. Someone's been making professional-level inquiries about your investment structures, shell companies, hidden acquisitions. Clara, I think Sophia's hired a private investigator." My blood ran cold. 15 years of carefully layered privacy could unravel if someone was determined enough. "How vulnerable am I?" I asked quietly. Michael leaned back, studying me. "Your legal walls are strong, but not indestructible. If this goes public, it won't just expose you, it could ruin Ethan's career. People will say his success came from family money. Every promotion, every job offer, questioned." I clenched my fists. I had hidden everything to protect him, and now that very secret threatened to destroy the life he built. Michael slid one last file toward me, and here's the kicker. The Harrington family, they're living on borrowed time, debt, loans, maintaining appearances while waiting for Richard to strike gold again or for Sophia to marry into money. He gave me a pointed look, and now, Clara, she thinks she has. This time, I wasn't just protecting my son's independence, I was defending everything I had built from being twisted and used against my own family. That night, I did something I hadn't done in months. I went to the kitchen, pulled down the bottle of Bordeaux Thomas, and I had been saving, and poured myself a glass. Then, I spread 15 years of financial records across my dining table. If Jessica wanted to play detective, she was about to learn she had picked the wrong opponent, that the numbers told the truth. a truth built on patience and relentless discipline. Thomas and I hadn't gotten lucky. We had been methodical. Every investment was researched. Every dollar reinvested. What started as $25 million became $50 million by 2015. By 2018, it was $200 million. And by the time Thomas died, our net worth had crossed $700 million. Since then, I'd only grown it further. But wealth wasn't the whole story. Quietly, I had been building something far bigger. I held major shares in over a dozen companies. I had licensing rights on 17 different technologies. I was invested in renewable energy, in biotech, in innovation itself. I wasn't just rich. I was entrenched, powerful, and not even Dylan fully understood how deep my reach went. My phone buzzed. A message from Dylan: "Mom, Jessica, and I want to come over tomorrow night. She has some ideas about how the family should handle this new information." Ideas. Of course she did. I could already picture it. Trusts, boards, committees, a collaborative approach to my fortune. She didn't understand that I'd been defending my interests long before she was even old enough to drink. Later that night, I reviewed the Reynolds finances, the ones James had helped me dig up. It was worse than I imagined. Their estate, mortgaged at 80%, their accounts, bleeding, drained to keep up appearances. Robert Reynolds, the man who thought he'd retired wealthy after selling his company, was living off consulting fees and board seats that I myself had arranged. His lifestyle depended on me and Jessica. She knew it. But what I found next was worse. She'd actually hired a corporate asset investigation firm. She'd contacted a lawyer specializing in family estate disputes. And most telling of all, she'd opened new lines of credit to fund this little scheme of hers. Jessica hadn't just married my son for love. She had married him as a strategy. That the wine warmed my blood. But it wasn't the alcohol making me bold, it was clarity. 15 years I'd played the quiet widow, let the world underestimate me. But Jessica's little stunt at the wedding, that had changed the game. I was done being underestimated. The next evening, Dylan and Jessica arrived like diplomats coming to negotiate a treaty. I had prepared a simple cheese platter, a modest bottle of wine, nothing to hint at the empire beneath my walls. "Mom, thanks for sitting with us," Dylan began carefully. "I know the last few days have been complicated." Jessica, sharp in her tailored suit, set down a folder and crossed her legs like she was chairing a board meeting. "Emily, this is all about the family. We're on the same side here." I smiled politely. "Of course, dear. What did you have in mind?" She slid her folder open. "Legal drafts, charts, proposals. I think we may have gotten off on the wrong foot. What I'd like to suggest is collaboration, a more strategic, long-term structure for family wealth." Dylan, visibly uneasy, added, "Jessica has some ideas about how we could structure things to benefit everyone." Her voice was calm, confident. "We were thinking of establishing a family foundation, charitable giving, tax advantages, investment coordination. I've already spoken with a wealth management lawyer." I almost laughed. The nerve of this girl, finding out about my money one week, then drawing up plans to access it the next. "And how much were you thinking of starting with?" I asked lightly. Her eyes lit up. "Around $50 million. Enough to establish credibility." $50 million, from the same woman who had called me a family embarrassment days ago. "And the board structure?" I pressed. "Equal votes, of course," she said smoothly. "You, Dylan, myself, and eventually, our children. Democratic, balanced." I set down my glass and leaned in, my voice calm, deliberate. "Jessica, tell me honestly, do you love my son?" The question cracked her mask. Her smile faltered. "What kind of question is that?" "A simple one," I said. "Do you love Dylan, for him? Or do you love what being married to him represents?" The silence grew heavy. Dylan shifted uncomfortably. Jessica tried to recover, but I didn't let her. I reached for the folder I had prepared evidence. I laid the documents on the table. "This," I said evenly, "is a record of your dealings with Aguilar Private Investigations, the firm you hired to trace corporate ownership." Jessica's face drained of color. Dylan's head snapped toward her. "Jessica, you hired investigators," she stammered. "It's not what it looks like." I cut her off. "And these notes from Vance Peters and Associates, a law firm specializing in trust litigation." I flipped another page. "Oh, and these new lines of credits you've opened. You were banking on cashing in soon." Bold gamble. Her composure shattered. Jessica, the polished strategist, was unraveling right there in front of her husband and I. I was only getting started. Asterisk, the real shame isn't being called an embarrassment, No, real shame is wasting a life trying to impress people who will never truly see you, instead of using that life to leave a mark that actually matters. What you've heard today is a fictional story, but it's rooted in truths that echo across countless homes. The names, the places, all changed to protect those involved, but the silence, the pain, the quiet battles mothers fight every day, that's all too real. And so I ask you, if you were in my place, what would you have done? Would you have swallowed your words just to keep the peace? Or would you have stood your ground, risked everything, and reclaimed your voice? Because every story we tell is more than entertainment. It's a candle, a light that might guide someone else out of the dark. God bless you for listening. Hold on to courage. It always leads to brighter days. And if this story spoke to you, stay with me a little longer. On the screen now, I've left you 2 of the channel's most beloved stories. Trust me, they'll surprise you. Thank you for being here. Until next time.